All right. I'll request the participants to please continue answering the poll. I see you all can see the presentation. Thank you so much. And most of you have varied, say, sources. So it includes LinkedIn, WhatsApp, email, and some of you also have heard from the friends. So with that, I think I'll end the poll. I'll just share the results here. And we will be using these polls during the webinar in between to understand more about our audience so that we can cater to your requirements and your interest in a better way. All right. So we have almost 40-45 people here, and I think we are good to start the webinar. So welcome all again. This is a webinar from Sea and Beyond in collaboration with MLA College. As I said, we have our speakers Arjun and Mr. Gordon Foot with us. And the topic of the webinar is basically to understand, have their insights about from sea to leadership, how the skills maritime professionals, what skills they need for career progressions once they decide to switch from sea-going jobs to shore jobs. And with that, I'll just set some ground rules for the conduct of the webinar. Uh, as we will be, the webinar is mostly in a question answer interaction between Arjun and Gordon, with me moderating the webinar. The speaking rights are given basically only to the speakers and the presenters. It's only to keep everything in check and not have disturbances in between. So I request to keep your mics off. Uh, Later on, what we'll do is, if you have any questions related to the topic that we are discussing at that time, I request you to put that question or your query in the chat box. You will be able to see the chat box. If pertinent, not breaking the flow of the webinar, we will try to include the question answer sessions at the end of the webinar. If we have sufficient time, we may also include, depending on the flow of the webinar, we will may include it at that instant also. So that is one thing. I'll also request you all to please rename yourself to your correct name, because some of the candidates I can still see are Samsung or iPhone or these devices names. It does not helps us to identify the person and answer to you by your name. It helps us to connect us in a better way. So I request you to rename yourself, how you want yourself to be called up, and why we are doing this. See. The and just to set this thing first, as I said, we'll be recording the webinar, and we will be sharing the recording after the webinar is completed. With everybody who has registered for the webinar, you will be able to see the recording also later on. So if you want to go through the insights shared by Gordon and Arjun, you will be able to go and see the recording again. Right. With that, let me put one more question before I start. A little bit about Sea and Beyond. I hope you all are aware about Sea and Beyond. But Sea and Beyond, as you know, we was started with Captain Gaurav Rana. Unfortunately, he is busy in another session. Say it's an extra master's class, and he's teaching there. It was at the last moment that he has to plan that. He was very much wanting to be here, but that was a commitment that came at the last moment, and he has to fulfill that commitment also. So it was started by Gaurav around 10 years back with the motivation to help the shipping fraternity uh, making well-informed decisions when they feel the time is right for them to switch from sea jobs, sailing jobs to shore jobs. And I can relate to it very, very clearly, because when I switched from sea to shore job in 2014, The only thing I knew was being a marine superintendent, nothing else. And that's what I did. Nothing wrong in doing that, I will say. Everybody has their career paths which they follow, but a little guidance, a little mentorship goes a long way into deciding a career and making it a much more better choice. Okay, so this is what CN Beyond does. We have various services to help us, help you get mentorship, help you in making informed decisions for transitions. We help prepare CVs because we know uh, the seafarer CVs mostly consisting of the sea time that they have done, the name of the ships, the name, the vessels they have done, how much time they have done, and it's maybe not completely appropriate when you are applying for a shore job, because in shore jobs you have to highlight the skills that you have gained during your whatever time you have done on the ship. So we have with those also. With that, let me come to the introduction of the speakers, and I'm very delighted to be collaborating with MLA College. And it's almost a year now that we have started this collaboration with MLA College, and I've known Arjun, who is basically a partnership and alliance manager at MLA College. He helps students to understand the distance learning program that MLA College is running. And this is one of the unique programs that we have come across, and that is why we are so much passionate about it, because it helps the seafarers continue their upskilling, their higher education, even when they are sailing on board. And this is something which we don't find in many of the MBAs or MScs that are being offered by other colleges. So we will discuss about this offering from MLA College maybe at the later stage. But just to give you a brief, Arjun is basically working with MLA College as a partnership and alliance manager, and before that, he has been a product of Hansraj College, and he has done also his MSc in International Management from King's College London. He was based in London for quite some time with MLA College, and I can say thankfully now he's closer, working from Delhi now. So it will be a good connect for us also, as well as for the students who want to reach out and connect with him. You can just pick up a phone and WhatsApp, and you can connect with Arjun. That's, I think, for from my side, and I'll request Arjun now to please come in and give the introduction of Gordon, and maybe continue the webinar as we have planned. Arjun, please.
Hi, everyone. Firstly, thank you for taking out time on your weekend, to be with us on this webinar. It's something we really, really appreciate. And on top of that, thank you to you, Captain Vineet, Smita, Disha, and the wider C and Beyond team for organizing this. Because as Captain Vineet mentioned, we've been working together for, the better part of a year now. And it's been a very successful collaboration for us, because we've been involved in a lot of events together, be it ICS Awards at Mumbai, be it also collaborating a bit at the India Maritime Week last year. So it's been a very fruitful collaboration with us, and we're very thankful to Sea and Beyond for the platforms that it has provided us, specifically within the Indian maritime sector. Now, without further ado, I'm extremely excited to be joined today by Mr. Gordon Foote. Although he needs no introduction, I must do the formality at my end. He has an extremely diverse career trajectory. So putting it down into a, say, linear path would not be optimal, but this is the best I can do. He had significant experience, say, in the Navy itself, around almost 2 decades, before he decided to transition more towards the commercial side of the maritime sector. And over there, in general, he had experience more, say, as an offshore client representative, fundamentally, across, say, different elite companies, across different geographical locations. And this is something we will venture into a lot more during our conversation. But another aspect that I would like to touch on, which we would get back to towards the latter part of our conversation, is his also extensive experience as an impactful leader in the maritime sector, be it championing causes which are very dear to maritime professionals, but are perhaps not talked about on a mainstream platform, like mental health, wellness, safety, and even now tackling the issue of homelessness, which is again something we'd mention, in a while from now. So, Mr. Gordon, welcome aboard.
Thank you very much, Arjun, for that introduction. It's always a little bit blushing period, isn't it? Somebody has to reel off who you are or what you do. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there thinking, Gordon Fott, well, I know him from LinkedIn, maybe, or but he hasn't got a captain title. So what does that mean? Or what is a client representative? Loads of questions already, no doubt. And I'm sure we'll get to answering those in due course. But firstly, I want to say a big thank you to Captain Vineet Shukla and the Sea and Beyond people and Smita who's joining us today. And of course, MLA College, who are fantastic educators in the marine and maritime space, for letting me use my voice. And I think me as a person, because we all have titles and you're confused at maybe what my title is. We've all done these lovely things and that, but what I am at the end of the day is a humble seafarer. I'm a shipmate to everyone on this screen here today, most of you coming from a different continent. So I'll say afternoon because that's where it is for you, but it's morning for me in the United Kingdom. And the first presentation slide that came up gave a beautiful picture of Plymouth in the United Kingdom on a sunny day. And we do have sunny days from time to time. But this time of year, most times it's horizontal rain. So anyway, there's your weather report. The other thing I wanted to highlight was the lovely little poll and quiz that we started out with. Where did you hear about this? Was it on LinkedIn, email? And I actually noted that it said friends was only 13%. There was a far greater percentage of ways of communicating and collaborating than just your friends. And I think that it personifies that what we are as a global community, a global infrastructure of what shipping is and what the maritime is. So out with our friends and our small circles or our colleagues in our work, and we might actually be working for a very large business. There are ways of reaching out and collaborating, and most often it's done through the digital technology of today. And I think this is where MLA College link in, because what they do is just absolutely fantastic to bring education beyond borders to a global audience, and also, most significantly, an audience that's still able to work or earn a living or carry on the career that they're doing while still being educated. And I think that's key. I'm sort of an unofficial ambassador for lifelong learning. I think that's very important, and I know most people joining us here on this webinar will be interested to know how they can learn because, like Captain Vineet said at the very beginning, we all have a different path in life. No two people are treading the same way. We might be following in somebody else's footsteps. We might be asking a friend or a more senior colleague to help with mentoring us or something like that. But, our walk in life is quite individual. And I think that's fantastic. If it wasn't, we'd all be AI or we'd all be robots, wouldn't we? But we're not. We're all humans, and that's what makes us unique and the things that we do on this planet. So thank you very much, Arjun, for the introduction. Where would we like to start? Because nobody knows what a client representative is, or they're saying, well, this guy's got grey hair, but he doesn't call himself captain. Why is that?
Gordon, I think you've preempted my first question, to be honest, because I was going to ask you, could you shed more light on what you're doing currently at this moment?
Yeah, what I'm doing, I'm representing a client. So this is where that quirky title comes from, client representative. So as a subject matter expert or somebody who's in leadership, from a strategic level, looking at maritime construction. So that could be oil and gas, very large project management, environmental programs, or the renewables. So what I do most latterly is building offshore wind farms. So the windmills that you see, and the future of energy, or for a nation's energy security, we're harnessing both sun and the wind, and wind has become very popular globally. So yeah, the vessels and ships that I serve on, and I'm still seagoing, and I have been always, are very large construction ships. Some of them are doing the initial work, which is hydrographic survey, and I know MLA College do some educational programs through there. Oceanography, because as mariners, we can only work, transit, or build things or do things in a maritime if the weather is favorable for us. So that's another important subject. And of course, engineering, and that's my background where I come from as an engineer. So what I'm doing at the moment is a submarine power cable. So between the Ireland and France, the two coasts are relatively close, and the project is currently 3 years in the making of putting a 570-kilometer HVDC power cable subsea and trenching and burying it, which will connect the two countries of Ireland and France. and that's part of a European program for the interconnectivity of energy, specifically electrics. But of course, this is what it's all about, sharing. So France will be able to share overcapacity in electricity with Ireland, and likewise, when the Irish build their offshore wind farms, and they have at certain periods, whether it's seasonal or time zone with their industry, have an overcapacity, they can share a surplus and sell it on to France. So I think the nature of what some of us most already know about with regards subsea telecom cables, which I always also do, which is where it's a network of web, and it's how we're now communicating now, because most people think it comes from satellite, all our web and interconnectivity, whereas I think today still 90% of the bandwidth traffic that we're all using at the moment comes via subsea cables, which in geopolitical terms have also become a hot topic as well, especially with the geopolitical conflicts that are ongoing at the moment, unfortunately. Yeah, so the maritime is very much in the headlines at the moment. So that's what I do. So my skill base really, or my competency, rest initially with being a mariner, being an engineer, and then as a superintendent or somebody overseeing would do, is this critical infrastructure in the maritime space, and the building works that we do to create that. So what they need is somebody, a leader that has that maritime background, has an engineering background, knows about subsea structures, and that's where I come in. And so I'm not an engineer as in propulsion, and I'm not a captain because I didn't go through the ranks in navigation. But here's the weird thing. Apart from not having those titles, because we all love hierarchy and titles, don't we? My previous career was actually in the submarines. So I spent a near 20-year career in the Royal Navy in submarines, which is obviously more security and defense based. But of course, it does involve a lot of times subsea. So that's how I know about the subsea world. Sonar and navigating subsea, and navigating predominantly without satellites, because submarines only use them intermittently. So some bit of old school navigation, shall we say, but also using the technology of satellites to get us a position fix as a check on our ready reckoning. Yeah, so navigating subsea is alien to most of the sailors here, but of course we all appreciate the inherent risks with that, and the professionalism that it takes to navigate a nuclear submarine around the waters of the world. Yeah, so that's me. So I bring my skill base now to the merchant maritime, as it were, from a construction point of view on offshore projects. So when you say I've had a varied career, I guess that's what it is, bit of a hybrid thing. Um, yeah, two careers really, one with the defense side of the maritime, another with critical infrastructure. Yeah, so just to add to the point about the hot topics, of course, we know about the Gulf Stream project that was blown up in the Baltic. We know about the geopolitical situation, which means that all nations undersea critical infrastructure is now sort of established as a known risk, and it needs to be defended. And of course, us mariners and all our families rely on the global community that is energy. So whether I'm working on an oil and gas or an LNG project, all the renewables, they all have an impact on us. And what's happening at the moment very much happens every person, very much affects every person on the planet. And it does me, even putting fuel in my car, what my energy bill for my house would be, because we don't have lovely sunshine all year round like most of you. We have to spend our money trying to heat things up, would you believe? But yeah. So I hope that gives people a better understanding of where my career comes from. And I don't believe I have a magic wand. I haven't taken on strategic onshore leadership role myself, but what I have had is, I guess, if there's a competency in it, is the ability to understand and see other people's careers, where they've led to, some of the things that maybe didn't go quite right for them, where there are opportunities that people don't always know about. So a lot of those key things, and I'm sure a lot of the audience are going to be thinking, oh yeah, I want to do that. I want to move. I want to transition to this. But how do you actually do it? And I think Captain Vineet had two key slides at the beginning, which was mentioning about, there is going to be some sort of transition. I saw the compass there. You know, we've all got to stay on track somewhere, and of course, you've got to have a vision. You know, if you're going to do some passage planning, you better know where you're going to. The bit about how to get there is always a personal sort of journey. But yeah, how do we get to the end game? And I know for some it's about money because at the end of the day, we have bills to pay, we have families to feed. We all want to better our lives or the lives of our family or our community. But of course, it's not always about that. And like Arjun said at the beginning, I also do quite a lot with the Merchant Navy Welfare Board, which is a UK entity, which is like an umbrella organization, which is an NGO or charity, which looks out for all the other charities in the maritime space. And we have in the United Kingdom, as you probably know, a very well set up, and across the Commonwealth, very, very smart charities, and some international ones like ISWAN and that do look after seafarers' welfare and mental health. And a lot of promotion goes around psychological safety and about kind leadership. So maybe we can hit on some topics during the conversation on those as well. But yeah, it's trying to make it a kinder, nicer maritime. So hopefully your audience that all want to progress in that don't necessarily see it as a hierarchical rank. I must get that rank. I must do that. I'm driven to do that. It's about money. I must get that money. I must do that. There are a lot of other ways to create sort of a legacy, a social impact, if you like, or make it a better maritime. And I think the more of us that think about that as an ethos or a way of how we go through life, you know, whatever religion you are, or whatever thoughts you are, or whatever sort of impact you would like to make in life. I think most definitely it's not always about the money or the next rank. It's about the good that you can do on that journey. And leadership, actually, is all about that. It's about empowering others. So some of the academic work that I did with MLA College was based around leadership and the future professional mariner. And it's amazing the amount of people that think you have to do this, you have to do that to be a leader. And the thing that I found a little bit annoying is when I Googled something about leadership books, there was something in excess of 2 million. So if you get Amazon or other sort of delivery people that can send you books, you know, that's going to bury your house, even if you had the money to buy all those books. But there was only like a handful that I would read because most of them were about getting one up on someone else, winning a battle. If it was marketing or sales, I understand what they have to do to generate leads and make money for their corporates. But the leadership was all based about grabbing, doing, getting bigger, much bigger. We all like to be bigger. But of course, leadership, I believe, is not about that. It's a human centric thing. And it's about the ability to have the knowledge, understanding, and competency to where your presence is actually empowering somebody else to be better than the person that they currently are. So that's my top tip on leadership. Maybe reframe what you think leadership is, and maybe you'll go a little bit farther by doing that. Yeah. Go on in, Arjun. What sort of questions are we going to come across then when we're thinking about this sort of as a scenario about transitioning?
This is very fascinating for me, Gordon, because I remember the last time we were conversing and you were telling me about the scope of your current role as well as, in general, your extensive subsea experience, right? I remember two things that you did mention were one, the psychological aspect of it, right? Because for a normal person, I'm sure it requires a lot of psychological adaptation to, as you mentioned, an alien environment to, say, conventional, what one would conventionally be used to, right? And at the same
Mm,
time, B, the sort of personality traits that would be required to persist, to lead, as well as inspire people around themselves to ensure that they can maintain themselves in times of critical events, right, or critical consequences. So, what I'd like to ask
yeah.
you is because you touched on the topic of leadership, that in these sort of, say, critical scenarios, right, based on your extensive subsea experience, what leadership skills really stand out and ensure that situations don't go from, say, bad to worse?
Rightio, here we go. I guess most people have come across the terms, but sometimes don't really understand how to achieve them. And most of them are soft skills. So I mentioned earlier about being human centric, because if this is a great scheme plan, if you think of yourselves as a corporate, I must be the top guy, I must get the most money, I must have a Rolls Royce and a big house or something. All they're aiming for is the material things, the end game, if you like. But we're all human, we're all people. So what should that mean to us? And I think subjects that we could talk around is something like cultural intelligence, emotional intelligence, and for all the short courses and little seminars and conferences, and you could get professionals that actually talk on that. I think the key aspect of understanding any of those attributes as humans that we need, the key thing that I think is actually understanding who you are yourself. Because a lot of leadership books that look outward, this CEO's done this guy did this guy used to be a music teacher at school, but he wanted to be an astronaut. So this is how he did that. So yeah, they're talking about a transition or something going from A to B. Um, but it doesn't really say about the person themselves. And I think that what the key things that you mentioned then was to discuss maybe about how my career came about. So as you can imagine, on a submarine, we used to do 3-month missions. So I know for a lot of sailors around the world, to go away for 3 months isn't necessarily a long stretch. In the offshore industry, we have and I know I'm privileged. My sort of working rotation is 4 to 6 weeks on, 4 to 6 weeks off. A lot of sailors on tankers or deep sea are doing that in months, not in weeks. But if you're in a tin can, which is invariably what a submarine is, and you're locked in, and that hatch, dunk, that's the hatch shut, and then you don't see anything, the outside world, your family, nothing. Of course, there's no email, there's no WhatsApp chat, no video calls, no nothing. Um, that builds a resilience. It builds a special kind of skill. The people that do the submarine work and live underwater, I guess similar in a way, I guess, to NASA. And if you're going out into space somewhere, you have to train for that. And the more experience you have of the knowledge and living that like that, it builds a sort of resilience. And I think on the earlier chats that we had, I wanted to put across that resilience doesn't mean putting up with, or this is really dire. I have a terrible cabin. I'm only fed once a day. I'm resilient because I can put up with it. Resilience, in fact, I would like to put across is more something that means that you're in touch with your surrounding environments. And that can be the material things like the food or the exercise or the cabin, because this is to do with mental health and well-being, but also the people and how you interact with people. So I must profess as well, I'm not a psychologist, but I think we've all had to work in teams, close-knit teams or project teams. So when you look at the psychology of people and how they interact, some of it's linked to what their title is. And I don't particularly like titles. They're saying that somebody is better than somebody else because their title gives them that right to be so. As human beings, we're all the same. We're all contributing and collaborating. So sometimes in a hierarchy, like we're used to in the maritime with ranks, it's because somebody has that duty and then that responsibility, which a lot of people also forget comes with accountability. So having gained that knowledge, experience over a greater length of time, obviously, hopefully good at it, and having the competency and achieving those higher ranks means that you might be in a position to make those extra decisions. So I think working in a very close community like a submarine, in a very high tempo role, in predominantly a watch system, which was a 6 hours on, 6 hours off, continuous for months at a time, does breed a sort of mindset. And I think the conversations we had over the last couple of days was more about a mindset. So everyone thinks they're motivated because they go to the gym for half an hour in the morning or something like that. But motivation as a life skill means, not just for short bursts or when you feel like it or it's during the week, but I'll do nothing at the weekend. Motivation means if you're motivated to do something, that you build resilience into that. So whatever your environment can throw at you or the challenges that come your way, that you're able to switch to a plan B, think about needing help and asking for it in an opportune time, to advance what it is that you wish to do. So yeah, there's a roundabout way of saying how your environment and where you are. And I know the sailors that are on this call now have probably done the same thing where they've gone an extended period without their family. They understand the sacrifices that are there, and some of them that are, mid-level or to senior have done it for some considerable years as well. So yeah, and everyone's example of that or how they've dealt with it is going to be different. So yeah, it's not putting up with or necessarily being hardened to, but it is a format of each of us as humans and individually how we adapt our skills to our surroundings. So understanding who you are, and that's what I like to think about. And one way I say that in some of my articles that I write, and that is to have a good look in the mirror in the morning. Have a really good deep look in the mirror and see what comes back, what's reflecting back at you. Do you really understand yourself? Are you going to have a good day today? Are you going to go out of your way to help somebody else, a colleague or a family member? How can I enrich my day? And I think if we all spent 5 minutes in the morning looking in the mirror and thinking, this is who I am, I know what I want to be, how can I achieve that? Or I'm going to do this. It's just that settling moment at the beginning of your day to make it a good day. And I think that's important because once you understand who you are, what your capabilities are, what you think you're good at, and what you think, or actually what you are good at, might be two different things. Having a good support network around you that is bold enough or has the psychological safety built in to be able to voice those opinions will help you a long way. And as part of my lifelong learning or my giving back or paying it forward to the Maritime, I do extensively quite a bit of mentoring. Some of that's in the formal aspects, either through MLA College, University of Plymouth, YMCA Plymouth, like educational establishments. I also do some more informal guys that have approached me and girls and said, I would really like some help. I'm thinking of doing it. And it might not be my career or what I'm doing, but they see me as somebody who is kind, can give somebody half an hour in a day. We can get a call. We can do it on WhatsApp, with technology now. And it makes somebody's life a little bit better, or they understand their issues or challenges a little bit better. So that's another good way of doing it. So yeah, understanding who you are, what you intend to do for that day, it can go a long way. And I think when you did mention about emergency processes or when things go wrong, I think what that tends to allude to is that it gives you a greater capacity in your thinking ability because the human mind can only take on so many challenges at once. And we all know people that once they get a challenge, they grit their teeth. Once the second challenge piles on top, they start sweating or moving around or get agitated, and then if somebody bangs into their car outside or it's something external to them that adds a third challenge, they fall apart. And sometimes it's the knowledge of understanding that you could have asked for help during the first challenge. The second challenge isn't actually your responsibility or accountability, so somebody else could have dealt with that entirely. So when the third challenge comes in and it's something remote or it's family calling for help, you can actually apply a good portion of your time to resolving that instead of falling apart. And it's the same, I think, in the maritime. If we go right to an engine room or a bridge incident, whether it be a fire or something like that, that it's the teamwork that counts. It's the people turning up with the right mindset, it's being there for each other. It's like we used to say, buddy in boats, because at the end of the day, you are all on the same ship, literally, and need to keep it afloat. So that sort of camaraderie and ethos and how you go about your day that then blends when it comes to an incident that you need to tackle with some urgency. It brings some core attributes into play. And some of them became, like we do drills and exercises. And I've been on ships, don't get me wrong, where it's not quite, but nearly a tick boxing exercise because they know they have to do it. It's on the IMO matrix. This is a drill we do on Sundays. There you go. It's done. I like it because I do go across a great many different ships. When I see people actually ask questions afterwards, do some lessons learned. Maybe if it didn't go quite right or somebody wasn't where they were supposed to be, they dwell for a couple of hours because it might be before lunch. They'll run that drill again after lunch just to make sure it does actually go to tune. And people with that mindset and the crews that gel to actually have that mindset and do it, they're the ones that are going to survive. They're the ones that are going to have a better day when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of dealing with something. Um, because we are creatures of habit. And if the habit is there, as this is my muster station, I know I'm the port side lifeboat. If you always go there, it becomes ingrained. So when it does unfortunately happen because it's never going to happen just before lunch or just after lunch, is it? It's going to happen at 0200 in the morning, and you're going to have a skeleton crew or a lot of people in their cabins. People get into that lifeboat station is going to be key. So yeah, so we've talked around psychological safety as teams, knowing that we can voice and have a voice, that it is listened to, knowing who you are as a person so that your interactions and your collaboration and your communications become key to success, then I think they're important attributes to have.
Thank you for that, Gordon. I think the paradigm that you present, that leadership in general is more of an inside out process than an outside in set of traits in which you're just looking at, say, materially successful people and trying to copy those traits, is perhaps a more long lasting an intrinsic process, right? In terms of like how you meant. Sorry, I think you want to say something.
No, I'm totally agreeing there because it's a good process. Because why do people buy these leadership books and that? It's because they want to be that person, or somebody's written a book. That's who I want to be because I want to run that corporate. I want to be that innovator. But of course, we can't all be that. If that was the case when I was reading about the Apollo landings when I was a kid, I'd be an astronaut. But no, it wasn't to be. But you know, the mindset I had when I was much younger was that I wanted a challenge in my life. So I know there's people that would just as happy sit on the sofa and play Xbox all day and that, but I wanted a challenge in my life. So I think that's what makes us engineers or navigators. Uh, we thrive on doing the extraordinary because that's what seafarers are. We're just extraordinary people. It is not a humankind domain, is it? The water. We're we're built to be on land, but of course, no. We say right, want to go in the maritime, so it always cuts you out as a little bit different as a person. But yeah, that's how I see it. That we don't ever sort of. I don't like to think that we would ever want a vision of mirroring somebody else because that's somebody else's life. That was somebody else that did something important or fantastic. But that's not to say that we can't take the good bits. And I think part of being leadership as well is thinking to yourself, I really admire that person. I aspire to do that or be that person. It doesn't mean to say you have to mirror them totally, but there's something good in what they've done. And I think as we all go through our careers and we've been on ships and we think, oh yeah, the second mate, absolutely fantastic passage planning, updating charts and that new Ectis inside out and that, you know, but they that made them special at what they did. But they're also special, I think, and more so for the case if they then share. So if they share those skills, and the chief mate that's a bit old school and a bit rusty, maybe not so good, but the second mate shared the knowledge or the shortcuts or how they did that or what allowed them to memorize that it was that subfolder in the Ectis where we had to put that in. By sharing it, I think that makes us a lot better people.
That makes a lot of sense, Gordon. One thing I do want to pick on further is that you did talk about, say, culture in general, right? Working with different teams, people, exposure to different environments, right? Maritime is a
Yeah.
truly global sector, right? So essentially, all professionals would be working with, say, different ethnicities, nationalities across different domains sooner or later at some junction in their career, right? Across multiple junctions generally. So what I'd like to ask you is that in this sort of say multicultural globalized setup, right? What separates people who adapt well over here, who adapt well to say globalized teams, multicultural teams versus people who struggle outside their home market?
Yeah, that's pretty easy because I come from an era where a flagged ship invariably had their own nationals. And to this day, don't get me wrong, I serve on some Norwegian flag vessels with a marine crew. 95% is going to be Norwegian with a couple of added in. But of course, as the offshore project crew that join these vessels, we are always the United Nations. You just wouldn't believe it. I think I was on a vessel one where it had a POB of maybe 240. So I'm not talking a tanker or a cargo ship. These have very large crews. When you've got two ROVs, you're doing subsea operations 24/7. You might be a pipe layer or something like, or heavy lift. All these sort of we got 4 or 5 cranes on these vessels, that are permanently moving 24/7 doing pipe lay. And the different nationalities you just wouldn't believe. But I'm going to take you back a little bit to explain why I think it works well if you already have that kind of mindset. And I'm not going to state the obvious because if you're already a misogynist or a racist, you're not really going to fit in anyway. And unfortunately, I've come across a few of those in my maritime career. I mean, we all have them. If you've done more than a decade, there's going to be one or two that actually don't really fit in that. But it is a shame. But barring those obvious things, why did a grey-haired old white guy get on well with the rest of the world? And I think that came down to my upbringing. So from, I guess, UK or European standards, that we don't particularly have poverty that the rest of the world would know. But I came from a disadvantaged economic and financial sort of background and had a relatively hard going childhood. That built some resilience in me, if you like. But I also then was schooled in West London, where at the time a lot of immigrants and second generation would come across from all corners of the Commonwealth. So when I was at school, I learned a few words in Gujarat, and most of my classmates were Bangladeshi, Pakistani, or Indian. So yeah, they actually knew cricket rules better than what I did. And because I'd come from a different area, I supported a different football team as well. So that didn't go down well as well. So when it comes to collaboration and communication with children, and I'm talking sort of elementary or secondary school, it's a totally different conversation to what adults have. And I think that's because they don't see a passport color. They don't see the skin pigmentation. They just see the fellow human. And if they know more about cricket, they want to show off about it. Or if they're actually better at cricket than you as well, that's good also. But I think the conversations are totally different. But as I grew older, I understood why those conversations, and I think that's the key thing. I understood what that multicultural and multiracial sort of environment was about. And I took those learnings in a good way into my maritime career. So, yeah, um, how you interact with people, how you go about your daily work, and there might be 6 or 7 different nationalities just in your domain where you are. And going back to that vessel where I said I think it was like 240 uh, POB, I think we had there was 40 plus different nationalities overall. So that was something to get your head around to start with, and understanding how other people operate or what their expectations were, and that. And most of it, what we were doing was built on respect. Um, so whenever I go to a vessel, I'm always the new kid on the block. I'm the senior guy. I have to introduce myself to the master, maybe the marine warranty surveyor. We have marine mammal observers, the engine room crew, of course, because they get us from A to B, and they're helping make the toilets work and the showers. So you love them to death, of course, as well. Uh, and the logistics side and the catering, and making yourself visible but friendly and respectful. Like we all know, the ship basically is that person's home. So although I'm sort of temporary and go from ship to ship, and some of it, for 6 weeks at a time or 4 weeks at a time, I still show that respect to all the mariners that are on there and the other people that are working on it. So I think that's a key thing about leadership, I think, is not being self-centered, understanding, because we all have an ego, but what that ego is or what it does, and it's understanding your place in the world. And from a, if you like, a diplomatic or a getting along sort of stance like that, then it's always key to do those sort of introductions. And what I tend to do is go to a toolbox talk or go down to the dirty coffee shop on the back deck, bring a packet of biscuits and have a coffee with the guys. It's fantastic.
No, that's extremely interesting to know, Gordon. I would like to actually zoom in on this further, to be honest, because I remember when we were discussing previously, similar to you, we've got other friends of the institution as well, right? Like we had a webinar with Mr. Krishnan, who's the current chairperson of ICS. And I remember one thing he talked about extensively was the sort of vocabulary one would require as a leader.
Yeah.
I remember this is a discussion we picked up on as well. One thing that I would like to pitch to you uh, is there, say, a fine line where the technical excellence that one actually, competes on, like, for example, even yours, weapon engineering specialization that you initially acquired, does that stop being enough after a while? And where is it that the leadership credentials, the soft skills, where do they actually start kicking in that there's career returns coming from there? Is there a tangible line
I
there?
think, yeah, I don't think there is, because everyone's career is different, and it depends where you're going to or from. Some careers will base around engineering or HSE, for example. But if you are moving ashore, you could put that into a government body, um, an auditing scenario, a different kind of HSE, because you might work at ports and harbors, for example, rather than physically the ships themselves. So it'd be the onshore infrastructure. So yeah, there's always going to be some differences, I think, about where you're taking yourself and your competency. But yeah, so I think you have to make a judgment yourself on that. But what? Please refresh my memory. What was the key thing you were saying there?
So basically, you have a certain sense of technical specialization, right? And you
Yeah, so
master
yeah,
it. Where do you start bringing in the soft skills, the leadership credentials? Where do they start to matter?
I think that the technical attributes or your competency stay with you through your life or your career. It's just how you adapt them to a more senior level. I think most people would think if you're starting on the tools, as it were, whether it's mechanical or electrical, then you move to more a supervisory role or administrative, and then whole departments, and then maybe a ship, and then maybe a fleet. So if you put it in the sort of aspects of the chief engineer or a superintendent, or from a navigation point of view, even a staff captain, how do you get to that sort of leadership position? It is undoubtedly going to be age related because you have had to have built up that experience. That's not necessary to say that it has to be an old crusty captain and have grey hair like me or something. It could be just that you've done it and now you're in your 30s or even your late 20s because you've had 10 years at doing whatever discipline it is that you do. So I think how you adapt to that yourself is important. For some people, it's not where they want to go and don't wish to gain that hierarchical position. They're more comfortable staying where they are and can be a subject matter expert in exactly what they're good at doing. So I don't think there's ever a force or a place where it said, well, you know what that next rank is, that's what you have to get, otherwise you're useless. It's never the case at all. It's people's adaptability and what they feel that they like to do. And of course, we do come across situations where people love the maritime, the sea, and the seafaring, whether it's in the engine, the deck, or like me with projects, and come to a place in their own personal life as well as what they do that they wish to move ashore. But there are a great many like me that carry on being seagoing, and they have their own personal reasons for that. So there is no right or wrong. But yeah, so the competency obviously comes into it, and that's your understanding, your learning, your educational background. That's going to promote you to that, and not promote as in rank, but move you forward into a position like that. And like you mentioned earlier, I think the corporate vocabulary that's important because we always have our anagrams, the way we speak, and the language we use offshore on a ship and when we're sailing. And of course, that will change the more you get towards a harbour than an office environment or even a corporate board. Um, so I think understanding that. I think we also talked about the politics because whatever company, and I'm going to talk about companies because most people, I guess, globally would prefer to be employed, would think about the politics that's built into a specific company or even a department within a company, and you have to be aware of those personalities, those cliques, what the etiquette is in that particular department. But of course, we also talked about. I remember that it was the point that people would join a company and it was for life, and they would see this is I'm going to retire because I've joined this factory or whatever, on a land job. And ships were most the same. You'd join a ship of the line. It was a certain company. It had respect. You showed your loyalty. You stayed with them. And that's just not the case now. So I think educators at MLA College are very attuned to that and know that there are some that will graduate, leave a maritime college or a university, or decide that they want a seagoing career, but they already have a mission in their mind that it's only going to be for 4 years or 5 years, that they actually enter the maritime with no aspirations to be the chief engineer or the master uh, or the chief caterer because they have a plan themselves in their life. And it might be for other reasons because they actually want to move across to a tech side. So they want to be in mass or autonomy. It might be that they like the regulatory side and want to join a flag or their national governing body for the maritime, for example. And I know some that will join and be like fourth or third because they know that once they've got the ticket and they've built up that background experience, they will then move to a VTS job or harbour master and helping imports infrastructure or something like that. So yeah, I don't really see where there can be a demarcation or a transition line. I think it's going to be individual to the person, specifically the trade or the branch that they're in, and just as importantly, where they see their future going. Um, so then the next role that they envisioning, like it might be in logistics in a port, or it might be the harbour master or VTS, they know that they would have to get that ticket and that. But there's always a lot of other skills that they would need to be successful in interview and securing that job. So yeah, it would primarily be navigation and that, but at the same time, they should have some supervisory experience. And there's micro courses out there as well that you can do, and just so much, whether it's psychological safety, welfare, resilience, Many of the hot topics that are talked about in conferences around the world, if you just pick up on a few key words amongst that, you'll know what those topics are. So if you've got some sort of background in it, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the hard-on, hands-on experience, but you could have taken your time out to actually learn and understand about that. And that could be in a certificate, a diploma, or a higher education sort of mode. And educational establishments are key at breaking into those and trying to make people aware that these facilities are available. And the gem of it is if you can carry on in your current career as a third or a fourth, and you're working towards something of a different mission with a different sort of twist to it, and you know that there's certain qualifications that would be more adaptable to securing and being successful at that role, then the education, especially in the maritime now, is adapting to that mindset. And there's a whole field of opportunities out there. Most of it delivered digitally now and online, which, of course, when I was much younger, that wasn't possible. So things were done by email, and you could do some sort of distance learning, like the Open University, for example, which is globally known. And a lot of seafarers, that was the only thing that they could do. So somebody that wanted to do an MBA or even a master's level education, but couldn't afford either the costs of doing it face to face in an established land-based university, or in fact, for a lot of people not being able to secure the time off work or the visa to travel to the country that was providing that education, that I feel was really important. So it wasn't inclusive. It was excluding a lot of people, whether that was through the passport they held or financially. And back in the early days when the technology was allowing more distance or blended learning opportunities, MLA College became key in achieving that. So definitely, yeah. I don't see it as a transition point. It is going to be fixed at anyone's career. But I think the important thing to know is that it will come at some time if that's what you're choosing to do. And of course, I
Yeah.
do also understand that we don't always get that choice. Sometimes technology moves on. So if your trade has always been in steam generators or something, and we're now moving towards nuclear fleet of commercial shipping, or you were always a sail maker and hands-on with ropes, but of course, with autonomy coming, they're coming into port and steering themselves and coming into magnetic grabs and things. So maybe we won't even lead mooring lines in the future as we transition through there, and those with specific skills retain what is obviously very important, that experience and knowledge, but can then transition or utilize that or even highlight it better through an educational course that will stand them in good stead. And of course, we all know that you're going to be in competition with a great many others that are like-minded, thinking the same. So when you go into an interview, it's not going to be a friendly one-to-one chat because there's only 3 of you applying. In modern times now, again with the technology, there's thousands of people applying, and they're applying from all walks of life, from every continent. So competition is going to be stiff. So to up your A game and be in the right place, this is where you've got to be thinking, what extra do I need to gain to have that advantage in the workplace? And I mentioned about the physical being part of a company, and this is where it used to be. And of course, now, like myself, I'm a consultant, I'm a contractor. A lot, or pretty much the vast majority of the maritime world is now contract based, and that's where we're going. So it's short term. You have to stay ready. So continuous professional development is also a topic where I know MLA College do bite-size education packages as well. So staying current, staying involved, keeping up with the technology, because it's moving at a far greater rate now in the last decade than it did the 2 decades before, for sure. So anyone in the maritime now knows they've got to stay ahead of the game, and there's many ways of doing that. But I think the first thing is, like I said, look in the mirror, find out who you are first, where it is you want to go, how you're going to do that as a leader. I see
Of
there's lots
course.
of
Yes.
got a
Actually,
lot
I
of
want to pick
questions
up.
coming in.
I want to pick up on
Hmm.
one. I'm sorry, Smith. I know these are delegated for the Q&A session, but I think one of these is very relevant to our conversation right now. So a question has come in from Vaibhav, who mentioned that a lot of seafarers struggle in terms of, translating their onboard skills and professional competencies gained therein to, say,
Yeah.
gaining onshore employability, corporate employability, which we've been talking about, right? So, what's the dead weight that they can shed, which does hold them back, to make them more employable there?
So I think what you're explaining is that seafarers don't quite understand what the skills are required. Is that what
Or
it was?
others struggle in understanding perhaps how their sailing skills can be translated to better onshore opportunities.
Yeah. Okay, so I can term that like when I worked in the armed forces in the Royal Navy and submarines, and I had a skill set that was very specific to the role I was doing. It was paid for by the military. There was no civilian equivalent. So although I had worked on nuclear power plants, although I had done very high level health, safety, and environment training because I was a Navy diver as well. Yeah, it's just a thing with subsea with me, and so being a diver as well has a vast amount of HSE in it, and operating complex systems like that is inherently going to be HSE related. But I didn't have any civilian equivalent skills of that, so part of a transition that I thought of was how to do that. And I didn't leave it to the last week before I left. Of course, if you're dynamic, you are motivated, and you should be using some form of time management and planning in your own career. At least 12 months before, I was thinking, how can I get a civilian equivalent? So in that case, I was at a disadvantage because I already had the skills, but needed the bit of paper or a formal qualification that I could put on my CV. Because, of course, like we all know, you can put lots of stuff on your CV. And then when somebody asks you to prove it, because they will do due diligence, they will ask you specific topics on it. At interview, it's okay because you can vocalize that. You have the vocabulary and the expanse to provide all the context behind a statement that you make. But you have to get to the interview first. And as we know, it's that shuffle. Most cases, it's AI or bots that are doing it now. So it's all to do with keywords and where you lay it out. But having that formal qualification or that bit of paper is going to be it, because if you state that I have that or I have that experience, somebody somewhere along the line will ask you to prove that. So that was a case in my case that I had to think about, was how to acquire, having got the knowledge or even being a practitioner, how can I go about formalizing that in an educational way so that my CV could be presented, and if asked, I could do that. So that financially cost me money as well. So it wasn't just about having the knowledge. Oh yeah, I'll go and do that exam, or I'll go and get that bit. It financially it had an impact. So we, in real terms, there is a reality there that's going to cost us to go and do that. So if you've always been a project manager for 20 years, but you don't have PMP, or you don't belong to that institute or learned body, or don't have that bit of pay, you're going to have to pay for it to go through, jump through the hoops, as it were, but yeah, to get that formal qualification. So yeah, experience is important, and of course that's who we are, and it builds our competency. But having the formal qualification counts as well.
I'd like to pick up on this, Gordon, even more, because I know in our previous conversation, when I asked you that when you studied MBA Maritime Operations with us, right, and you worked on that dissertation project, did that translate into you being able to use that academic knowledge, right, in a more applied manner? Uh, could you maybe,
Yeah.
from this case, generalize how structured education with experience can actually amplify these opportunities more?
Right. So I everyone will do education for a different reason. I was already in a senior position. I didn't particularly need to enhance or have something like that on my CV, but I chose MLA College because of the distance learning element. So I could carry on my career at sea, my earning. I could still feed my family, pay my bills. This was a key thing for me. But primarily why I wanted to venture into the academic world or higher education at that level and do an MBA, bearing in mind I was already in my 50s. So it was it was to, in my case, pay it forward or give it back. I wanted to write a piece of research that would be, eventually, my aim was, and we all have to have an aim, and our why would we want to do this, is to get it in front of policymakers so that it would affect change. So I think one thing that maritime and the seafarers and all the skills of sailing that we've got now, sometimes you don't actually think how it could benefit others, how it could benefit the next generation even. But believe you me, it can if you think big enough or you dream big enough. And my dream was to write a paper about the future professional mariner. What would the skills and attributes and competencies be needed? What would the future blue economy look like? And having completed it and written it, I think what it did was it opened up a network for a start, because in my position, I already knew quite a few people in senior positions, whether it was government, flag, statutory bodies, um, maritime educators, for example. By doing that and setting up a survey and contacting all these people, they weren't people that I talked to every day. Some of them were that high up the ladder beyond me. I thought they won't even respond, but they saw the impact or a vision that I had maybe and said, "Oh yeah, we'll assist you with this." So, without a doubt, even joining higher education and considering doing something like that, which is research, and you think, well, how's that going to help? It does, because it instantly then it's built your network. And the MBA that MLA College presented was obviously distance learning. So it wasn't that I went to uh, a very well known European university where I would be sent to conferences, where I would go on road shows, I would be handshaking and bumping into all these key people in the maritime. This is a whole different sort of MBA, because you're a practitioner already or in a senior leadership position. It was part of the process of understanding collaboration, communication, teamwork from entities or people or third parties that you don't ordinarily work with. So there's a key attribute straight away, that it's widened your network, it's honed your skills on collaborating and communicating at that much higher level. It wasn't just a WhatsApp chat. Hey, can you help me here with my research? So it underlines those skills, builds those skills. I think, like you mentioned earlier about the vocabulary as well, understanding that when talking in a strategic or leadership position, especially with people you've never met before, making those bonds, creating that trust. How can you do that? You can do that through your vocabulary. You can do it through understanding a bit about the narrative or where you are in that corporate world. How else can it help? I think we all like to think that we know a lot, but in fact we don't. So when you're undertaking some sort of research like that, it opened my eyes to a lot of the corners of the maritime that I thought I knew about, one of them being the IMO. And I thought, well, I know what the IMO is. It's in London. I have had the luxury last November actually going there, walking into the hall, and I thought, right, I know what they do. You can Google, you can only Google so much, but you get the corporate in your face. This is what we do. This is our action plan. This is our mission. This is what we're trying to do with STCW at the moment. But when I did research at that depth, and which include articles of other learned societies and other peers, it highlighted to me that I thought I knew a lot, but I don't. So that was another angle, I think, of making you a more rounded person. A key attribute is knowing your limitations, knowing what your understanding is, or the depth of your understanding in some topics, and then being brave enough to actually venture out in there. And MLC was another one. I thought I knew about MLC and the rights of seafarers, and because I do a lot of charitable work, fundraising in the welfare sector, and that. And I thought I know about that. Oh man, when you actually get to actually learning about it and understanding what other people have written in an academic world about such things, it's eye-opening, mind-boggling. But that's the refreshing thing about it, because it made it a challenge. And I think higher education or whatever you want to do in life, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it, wouldn't they? But no, it's definitely a challenge. But the one thing I will say, because they asked me afterwards, things like, how do you like it? I guess I'm a bit weird. I found it as a very enjoyable challenge, if there is such a thing. So, yeah, it's fun along the way. It's fun finding out if you enjoy education, like I do, sort of an ambassador of a lifelong learning. It is getting to that pinnacle and thinking, yeah, there's a challenge. It was fun doing. Um, yeah, so attributes like that, being able to write in an academic way as well. So as an engineer, as a background, I could write reports. As you notice, I can talk. So if it's a conference or verbal or meetings, great with that. Being able to put knowledge down on paper with an understanding that somebody else is going to read it and that somebody else is not going to be you. They must understand it and grasp the subject that you're talking about, that you've put enough facts in there to convince somebody this is knowledge, and enough context so they understand the angle that you're coming from. So they might come back and say, well, no, actually, I think this, or yeah, I totally agree. Their outcome, it doesn't really matter. It's that you've presented that as something of learning and you're sharing it. I think that's key as well. So that it teaches you many skills that you don't use every day. I turn up at the galley and say to the chef, "That's not really a hamburger, is it? It doesn't look like a hamburger," but he'll convince me it's a hamburger because he's made it, and I'll eat it. And I'll go, "Yeah, I enjoyed that. yeah, that was really good. So the display that he put on, how he sold it to me at the galley counter, yeah, that's a damn good hamburger. That's how you can win. So in the education world or at a higher level like that, it's having that ability to be convincing, but you're only going to be convincing if you've got the groundwork, the facts, actually presented it and presented the context with it as one body and said, this is the reality as I see it. And another key thing as well is your reality is not the same as everybody else's, and that can be affected by politics, your geopolitics. It can be affected by your culture and your upbringing as well. And I think that's important to understand. And again, bringing it back to the maritime as a global community, we are all different people, and yeah, working together can be eye opening sometimes. And I remember working in Nigeria quite a lot. I've worked quite a lot in West Africa, and somebody's principles or understanding about safety with regards to what scaffolding is or what it's not, or working at height or in close space entry or something like that. It's like, wow. And it's not because I've done more courses or training because I know about it. I think the important thing to grasp as a leadership is understanding their mindset, why they thought that was a good idea. Sometimes it's because it's all they knew, but we, as privileged Europeans, are more are just as guilty as that. It's because we've always done it this way. This is the right way. Having an understanding and somebody else's point of view that you can only gain by having respect in the first place can lead you down some avenues where you think, yeah, that's a much better idea, actually. I like that better. I like that idea a lot more. And yeah, we grow through that together. And I think that's what the education's about.
Thanks a lot for sharing that, Gordon. Captain Vineet, would you like to say something?
Yeah. So Gordon, I like the first thing where you started out. We should know about what we are inside and what we
Yeah.
want. And that's what is related to the question also. And we hear these kind of questions almost every day because uh, there are skills that we gain when we are sailing, when we are on board. But how do we translate those skills, those additional qualities that we have honed when we are applying for shore jobs? So that's where I think we need to know what are our personality traits which can gel into the requirements as per the field or the place where we want to end up. And very fine example, like you are an engineer. So uh, I had a friend who was a master, and it is a very clear demarcation in earlier days. There's a master cannot be a technical superintendent. It was a job of a chief engineer, and he was very
Mm.
clear in his mind that whether I'll be failing at that, but I want to do it at least once. And he is very good technical superintendent doing all the work now in a ship management company. And that kind of clarity, if you have in mind towards your job role, and same way a chief engineer also can be a marine superintendent. It depends on his adaptability, his eagerness to learn. And that is where I we feel sometimes that a lot of people whom we talk to each day, they somehow undermine themselves,
Mm.
their achievements. I mean, you are moving millions of dollars of cargo every day. If we can see even now, so many vessels are stuck in the Strait of Hormuz and at different places. The whole economy is in shambles, but we undermine ourselves. So we need to have that confidence that my skills develop. It is not only about sailing skills or a master's skill to handle vessel or a second mate skill to plot a chart course. You are doing something much bigger than that. You are handling emergencies, you are handling multinational crews, as you have said, handling at 40 multinational crew at a offshore rig takes effort and time and a lot of different kind of personality traits, uh, which may not be open to a person who has already worked at a shore establishment for years. He may have worked only with only a single nationality all his life. So these are the things which we need to highlight when we are planning, identify those things. And I think we also have developed one, just to put it in the perspective, We have just developed a career assessment test. Recently, it was launched where we help people identify their personality traits and the relatable fields where those traits can be helpful. I mean, it's not only about technical management, ship management, but business development also. Why a master or a engineer cannot go into business development in sales or relationship management jobs in a corporate house? But we should be open to explore these kind of jobs, these kind of fields, and not restrict ourselves to the typical stereotypical jobs that have been going on for years. Like you have transitioned from a navy submarine background to a consultant now, with working with so many different places, different companies. So we have to be more adaptable, open, and eager to learn. And that is where I think MLA and your courses in sustainability and recent the very core fields which are happening with the buzzwords like sustainability. Everybody is talking about sustainability, but we don't know how to gain that knowledge, how to improve and work on that field to transition from something that we want to go into. So that's, I think, sums it up from for me.
Excellent summary, Captain Vineet there. Yeah. We underestimate what we can do as individuals. And I, in my youth, was exactly the same. I would stay to my rank. I would do the work that was asked of me. And it dawned on me, a little bit later in life that if you push those boundaries, if you do more than you've been asked for, and that doesn't just mean, like you mentioned there, in the technical sense, it could be your social awareness, how you engage with others, your flexibility, your adaptability, your and if people happen to read on LinkedIn.com, where I do sort of an inspiring the future thing as part of my fundraising, a lot of that is around attributes that you just mentioned. So it's usually corporates or very small organizations or charities or individuals that have inspired me. And I highlight them as a way of sharing with the maritime community why they have inspired me. And it is usually down to this person has shown respect or endeavor or courage in this wing, and not necessarily in technical ways. It's because they've thought of other people, they've considered kind leadership. Um, yeah, a friend who's a fourth engineer, Amelia Busby, she approached me to discuss about a WhatsApp group she was going to do called Shipmates, and you think, where did that come from? She's a fourth engineer, fixing machines and things. Why did she think about that? She thought that because she's in an engine room and doesn't get to collaborate or talk with others, only those that are on her ship or even in her company, she wanted to know about other people's experiences. And what greater way of thinking something like that that's digital, where people anonymously or otherwise could then share their experiences, was a fantastic way of doing it. And there you see a future leader, because they're, the old term thinking outside the box. What they're doing really is thinking bigger than themselves. We are all a small cog in the machine that keeps on turning, but there are ways to um, shine a little light on invariably other people or the kind things that they do. And I think a lot of us, whatever our faiths or beliefs, have in our childhood been taught that to give a bit of kindness, you usually get quite a lot more kindness back, or you attract positively minded people and positive, like minded people in your interactions with others. And I think that's just a basic human trait, really. So what you summarized there, Captain Vineet, was good. We should never put down or play down what we do. And you might say, "Oh, I'm just the chief mate. I've been sailing as a chief mate all the time." But you think about that role, what it involves, the complexity of it, um, the adaptability, the flexibility coming in and out of ports, just running the ship from day to day, the amount of interactions that person would have with the rest of the ship, not least the shore. And I know that administrative burden is just becoming stacked higher and higher for a lot of vessels running. So, yeah, you're also a PA, you're a firefighter, you're a first aider. I mean, I see some posts sometimes on social media, oh, what does the second officer do? The list is massive. And I think if it was a land-based job, that person would probably get about 6 salaries because they're definitely doing about 8 different jobs. So yeah, never play down what you're doing in the maritime, because I know and I recognize that it is far more fantastical than any shore job that you have.
This has honestly been a very, very fascinating exchange, very insightful for me personally, and I'm hoping and assuming for the audience base as well. Uh, Captain Vineet, one thing I just request you to do is if you could share that QR code, which I sent you. Gordon, this is more to highlight, the social impact and the scope of work done to empower the next generations as well, right? Uh, we've talked about, say,
Yeah,
some of
thank you
the
for that.
extreme expeditions that you've been on in terms of Mount Kilimanjaro or skydiving, or the Nordic expedition that you're thinking, or rather you're going to pursue this year.
Yeah.
Could you shed more light on that? What motivates you and what do you plan to do this year?
That's very kind of you, yeah. And it's a kind of the social impact, like you say, it's sharing with the maritime community. I would like the maritime community to keep thinking on that community basis, that we're all there for each other. And the charitable sector is one way that do help people that are either in crisis or need assistance, and invariably that's not of their own making. And we all know and see the headlines because, of course, the maritime only hits the press when it's bad news. But the criminalization of the seafarer, abandonment of seafarers, it's not good. It happens globally, and it happens ordinary to those that can at least afford it to happen to them and their families. Um, so I do understand my privileged position where I am. I do use my voice for good in the social world for the maritime community. And one way I can do it is just because I'm a bit crazy, is do these mad trekking or climbing a mountain or something. It's usually something entirely different from a ship or a submarine. So, and it usually has a purpose and a context to it, which is important. So the most recent one I'm doing is for homelessness. So I've decided to go to Lapland between Sweden and Norway, which isn't particularly warm even in August, and move from mountain hut to mountain hut. I'm seeking that shelter, that respite, and homeless sailors are doing the same. So on my trek, I'm doing that for about 8 days, and it helps raise money for the charities that help the homelessness. Why do I do that? Everyone has a why in life. I think when I was younger on submarines, I used to help the younger guys who maybe didn't learn well at school, didn't have their education. I used to teach them maths and English, and it was a way of helping other people. When I left the submarine service, we became into the digital world. I realized that social media, like we discussed at the very beginning, where we don't necessarily learn things just from our friends or our family, but there's a much wider world out there to collaborate with. And it was a way of saying, if you've got or can spare the price of a tea or coffee or your Friday night beer, if you donate it to this charity, it can do so much good. So people that had €1 or €2 to spare or a dollar could donate that, but it became impactful in the large sum of money that could do good. So yeah, and I think as I've got a bit older in life, I've got a little bit more crazy, and because I can afford to do it, I self-fund these myself. So every single penny goes to the charity. MLA College also helped that with referrals. So if you're presenting any gift through the referrals, that all goes and donates to the charity as well. It's a way of highlighting some good in the world. And like I said more than once, I think the maritime gets into the press for all the wrong reasons, whether it's Piper Alpha, the Titanic originally, now the Straits of Hormuz, always for the wrong reasons, blocking the Panama Canal. I think being over the horizon and literally out of view from the general public, they don't know enough about the maritime. But we are a massive community. We are what keeps the world revolving in all things: commodities, materials, peoples, energy. The maritime is the web, the heartbeat of the planet. We don't seek glory or our names in banners. We just I think would like respect. And one way of doing that is spinning a good thing about the maritime. So it's a good news story, really. And along the way, it's helping people and the charities. So thank you for highlighting that.
So thank you so much for sharing on that, Gordon. I'm sure it's considering the range and the coverage that your expeditions, that your challenges receive. Of course, I'm sure it resonates a lot amongst the maritime community, amongst your colleagues, amongst professionals who've never even known you personally, but have come across
Mm.
snippets of your content or people resharing your content, right? So I'm sure it's the resonance that creates this sense of people intrinsically believing in the sort of causes that you're promoting and seeing their relevance for the
Yeah.
maritime sector in general.
Yeah, and I think it's the maritime community in general is putting a positive spin. It's a good news story. I don't think people want to read the bad news stories all the time. So yeah, I'm what we call a glass half full kind of guy. I do respect reality, and there are some terrible places and horrible things happening to our fellow mariners and that. So I respect that and always put a shout in that as well. For all those that are in harm around the world, it is a sad situation. Um, but trying to, as I said, put a positive spin, show some passion for the maritime, and yeah, there are challenges and things that we can do better. But I think only by this big collaboration, dreaming big, believing that even little you and I, can have some effect maybe to some policy somewhere by just having a voice or speaking up for others that whose voices are covered. That's a good thing to do in the world.
So on a related point, Captain Vineet, is it possible to share the QR code of this the Nordic expedition?
Yeah. Are you not able to see the QR code now?
No, it's Gordon. Are you able to see? I don't think I am at my end.
No,
Okay.
no, it's not in the chat, and it's not up there. But not to worry. I think those folks that know me on LinkedIn, they can. There you go.
There
We
it
can
is.
see our screen. It's shared now.
Okay.
Yeah, fantastic. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute fantastic honor, and I also would like to thank all those viewers that have come in and either viewing it or listening to this webinar. Seeing beyond, it's a good collaboration. Uh, it's hopefully gonna benefit everybody. I can see here that we've got a relatively large audience as well. So yeah, I don't have a magic wand for everything, but if I said a few little nuggets of truth or ways of thinking about something a little bit differently in your path on um, your educational career or your career in the maritime, then I hope I've been a little bit helpful. Um, some key things that we've talked about just to finish off with them were basically look in the mirror in the morning, find out who you are first, what you're about, how can you be yourself a little bit better each day is always a good thing. From then on, it's just, never being afraid to ask a question. There are people out there to assist you. There are people that do mentoring. There's some fantastic institutions like Sim Beyond that I'm sure assist seafarers in their career as they go along. The educational side, like MLA College, that do it in the digital age now, allowing you to do it whilst you're earning at sea with education beyond borders. And it's right, the education is for everyone. So it is more inclusive. We are all able to access that, and financially, it's a lot easier to do now. And you can get support through bursaries and funding as well. So a great many attributes, a great many things to think about. I wish you all well with your safe seas and a great career.
It's been extremely insightful, Gordon. Before we close, I'd just like to quickly mention two programs of MLA College on the theme of our conversation today. So again, as Gordon has stated multiple times, because he himself has gone through, our MBA Maritime Operations program, we specifically cater to an active seafarer base who don't want to take a break from, say, actively sailing or from their maritime profession, even if it is, say, onshore. While they dedicate their time towards their studies or their degree programs. Of course, we've gone through, say, the innumerable benefits that can arise from investing in structured education. But at the same time, the core offering is that you don't take a break from actively earning while you are studying, thereby making the financial implications a lot lighter than the traditional university system in which you would have to, take a break, come to the campus, relocate, devote a year or two, and then go back. Because certainly there's different financials and flexibility around these sort of scenarios. So just for reference, our master's in maritime operations is a 2.5 year long program. There's a certain tuition fees there, but just for reference, people coming through C and beyond are eligible for discounts if they do, apply with us. And at the same time, there are 3 different exit points. So even if, say, a 2.5 year program seems a little lengthy for you, you can exit after 3 modules, which would be, say, roughly 1 year, or after 5 modules, which would be roughly 1.5 year, or all 6 modules, which would be 2.5 years, and get a different certification accordingly. You could get a postgraduate certification, a postgraduate diploma, or a full Masters of Science project. So based on, the exit that you want, or your personal life circumstances, which might force you to perhaps exit earlier, any other reason, it does have different exit points for you, making it more comfortable. And just moving on to the next program, which Gordon himself covered, We have a suite of MBA programs as well, and a relevant one is MBA Maritime Operations, which is generally aimed towards senior seafarers who do want, say, an academic deep dive, scholarly deep dive, as well as a strategic overview, which can establish their academic credentials for leadership positions as well, to acquire the sort of leadership vocabulary that we have been talking about throughout our conversation today. So this is just a 1 year long research project based program, on completion of which one gets a full MBA degree from the University of Plymouth in collaboration with MLA College, which is our awarding body at the end of the day. Gordon, if I'm missing out something specific with regards to MBA, please feel free to fill in.
No, that sounds exactly like it. And because Nico has kindly put a question in the chat then about being assessed, I would like to say for seafarers that don't discount the fact that you've got a COC, whatever class you've got, and experiential learning. So just because you haven't got a bachelor's doesn't mean you can't do a master's degree. So do make that application, do make those inquiries, and you'd be quite surprised. So a lengthy career with good reports, a fantastic CV, and having that experiential knowledge will definitely go in good stead towards that. So yeah, experience does count when you're looking at that application.
Thank you for the share, Gordon. So I've also put my email address in case anyone does have any queries and would like to directly connect with me. But Gordon, thank you so much for your time, for your insights. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you to Captain Vineet, Smita, Disha, and the entire, Sea and Beyond team for providing us with the platform. And thank you to the attendees for taking out time today. It's been a pleasure engaging with you.
I'll just take a few minutes before we end this, Arjun, and I have a poll here just to take an understanding of if people will be interested in knowing more about this course or this DLP program. And while I'll also answer the question that was in the chat box, that see, each individual has their own very specific requirement. So your career trajectory, as Gordon has said, that your career trajectory or your future aspirations may not be the same with 40, 50 people odd who are present in this webinar. So for that, it will be much better if you can connect with us, and I have shared the details here on the screen, or you can connect with Arjun also. You can connect with us. Let us understand what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what can be the best suitable field or option for you to pursue when you want to transition to a shore job. And like somebody has said that uh, everybody wants somebody with experience. So it's a unfortunate thing, but you already are experienced. You're not fresh graduate out of a college. You have experience of decades of handling vessels, handling cargo. How you need to transform that into a CV which can reflect your experience will that is where C and Beyond will come in, help you out. Each individual case, let us talk to us, talk to our counselors. Smita is there, Disha is there. Let us identify what is needed to be done, whether you need a short term course, whether you need a distance learning program like MLA College is offering, or you have a very specific program in a college in Rotterdam or in London or at someplace else. Let us bridge those gaps and chalk out your journey to where you want to be in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. It should not be a very short term understanding of I just wanted to leave shipping and get the best job or the first job that is being offered to me. Please don't get into that mindset. It may take some time. I agree, it may be frustrating, and we speak to people who say, sir, I've been waiting for 6 months. I couldn't find a job, and finally I'm going back to ship again. I understand that there is frustration, but you need a clarity in your mind and mentorship and guidance from people in the industry, which will help you out certainly. And we have been doing it, and thanks to Gaurav and CN Beyond and the team that we have been doing this, finding out the other opportunities like MLA College, this distance learning program. You don't, like Gordon said, you don't need to stop earning and it makes a big dent. When you are earning, you have to stop it. You go for a full-time course in a European country, and it's I mean, I can relate to it. Your expenses increase. You have to cater to your family also, take care of your schools, your kids school education also. At the same time, you have to continue and upscale also. So we need to understand your basic requirements. Connect with us. We have shared the details. Connect with us. Let us understand your requirements. Give you a mentorship. Give you a very clear guideline specific to you, and then we can take it from there. There are roles for each and every individual. I mean, you cannot say that nobody is there to help me out, and I will not be getting any sure job. It doesn't work that way. It may take some time, some persistence, and some recurring applications. That's where we help you out. And it may also need some kind of upscaling. Like we said, the kind of IT understanding, IT knowledge that was expected out of a seafarer 5 years back, it has grown exponentially, and the minimum IT knowledge expected now is way much higher. I mean, we are not talking about Microsoft Office, Excel, PowerPoint. We are now dealing with AI tools, even handling various LLM models. So you have to keep abreast of the requirements, keep upscaling, and you will get a break. That's what we are here for. That's what mentors like Gordon are here. Arjun is there to help you out as a student manager. So there are people to help you out, but don't give up first. Make your mind, and we have been telling each and every one of you, you have to decide why you want to switch ashore, when you want to switch ashore. These are the two questions that you need to answer. How you will do it, we will help you out. That's what the role of C and Beyond and mentors like us are. Yeah. Okay. So thank you once again, Gordon and Arjun, for this wonderful session. I hope we have answered the questions, Webo and other candidates. If you have any other queries, even after the webinar finishes up, feel free to write to us at education at C and Beyond. Uh, you can write to us even at our individual IDs. You can connect us through our LinkedIn profiles. We will answer each and every question, and we are there to help you out. Thank you again, once and all, for joining. Take care. We'll hope to see you catch up again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.